to think that here, a long time ago, the first masters of our discipline worked.
The thirst for new relics from the lost world was insatiable. Before long, those first chaotic excavations had produced a network of tunnels crisscrossing the entire region. During those frenzied days, the explorers stumbled upon a vast Roman villa, which was later recognized as the Holy Grail of Latin and Greek philosophy. Located some distance from the main buildings and at the end of a tunnel, there was no access to the building from outside. The tunnels were abandoned and the villa was lost. 250 years later, De Simone and Cioffi set out to find that villa.
For 226 years, archaeologists had searched this entire area trying to find the villa by referring to old maps. Instead, we decided to approach local people directly, asking whether they knew of any old wells or shafts.
In 1984, they were called to a house in Ercolano. Tucked away in the basement behind an obsolete washing machine, they found an abandoned shaft.
We climbed down the well on a rusty ladder. And as we moved down, Antonio said, "I think I see something."
I saw some stones positioned in a strange way, which seemed to be blocking some kind of passage. We went into the passage with our torches and found ourselves directly below the villa. I was able to push my head up through a small gap, and there, stretched out before me, were the floor mosaics of the villa. We had accomplished an archaeologist's dream that had lasted for 250 years.
Cioffi broke one of archaeology's golden rules, but he realized he would need to prove his find.
I picked up a small piece of mosaic to take to Mr. Conticello, the superintendent of Pompei, so that he would believe us. We went to Pompei and rushed into his office unannounced. He was sitting at his desk, and we placed the piece of mosaic in front of him.
He thought we were joking.
He went pale. He got up and said, "Have you found it?" And we said, "Yes, we found it."
De Simone and Cioffi had rediscovered a building which was the crowning glory of their careers and of Herculaneum. In a pit carved from 2,000-year-old volcanic rock is the only surviving library of the ancient world. The Villa of the Papyri.
This is part of Herculaneum, and this is the Villa of the Papyri. Part of it has been excavated from the volcanic rock which consumed it in 79 AD.
It took 6 years for the team to open up and document even this tiny section of the villa. Most of the building is still entombed in 90 feet of rock, but detailed plans reveal just how stunning it was. Ancient Rome is known for its military power, but the Villa of the Papyri contained the written records of Rome's knowledge. A palatial building, it dominated 300 yards of coastline on the Bay of Naples. The villa was the country estate of Calpurnius Piso Caesennius, the father-in-law of Julius Caesar. Its vast library attracted scholars from all over the Roman Empire, a seat of learning for the greatest minds of the ancient world. De Simone and Cioffi rediscovered the library, but not its contents. They had been removed 200 years before De Simone and Cioffi were even born. The first excavations of Herculaneum were begun in 1738, when Charles III of Bourbon ruled Naples. The National Library in Naples was once the Royal Bourbon Palace. The most precious items from the Villa of the Papyri were removed and are now housed here, in temperature-controlled conditions. When the 18th century tunnellers first explored the building, they unearthed thousands of strange objects. At first, no one knew what they were, but it soon became clear. This is a carbonized scroll, an ancient book, converted to charcoal by the intense heat of the pyroclastic flow. It is one of thousands of tightly rolled reed scrolls containing the writings of Roman and Greek scholars.
It's a great privilege to work on the papyri from Herculaneum. I have dreamt about it since the first time I was here 30 years ago as a young scholar.
Professor Canute Clevet heads a small team of dedicated volunteers who are determined to do the impossible. Their aim is to prise the charred scrolls apart and read them. Each of these hardened lumps is a 2,000-year-old book. When they were first found, they were not recognized, and many were simply discarded.
The first time they were found, they were believed to be charcoal for the fireplaces in the villa and thrown away.
Once the early explorers realized the papyri were books, they did try to open them, often with disastrous results. Many were sliced through, stabbed at, and torn apart. Today, opening teams are trying to undo the damage. The scrolls Clevet's team is tackling are fused solid.
The most difficult papyri were left to us when we started in the middle of the 1980s. There hadn't been open papyri for about 100 years.
Clevet's team has pioneered a new technique to separate the layers of papyrus. They coat the outer layer with a gelatin and acetic acid solution. The gelatin holds each fragile layer in place, while the acid separates it from the one beneath. It's a piecemeal process, but it has enabled the papyri to be laid out and translated.
There are still 1,000 papyri to be opened, and I think it will take more than our lifetime to open them. I would describe it as listening from a voice from the grave, from the dead. The dead are somehow whispering to us in those papyri, and we strain to hear what they say.
Opening the ancient books is only the beginning. Reading them has been extremely difficult, the results patchy, but a new scientific technique might change that.
We are making the invisible visible.
Stephen Boras travels the world applying NASA technology developed to photograph stars and planets to the deciphering of ancient texts. This pioneering technology could open a window on the ancient world.
That's a pretty day.
A room in the National Library has been converted into a laboratory for Boras and his wife Susan to photograph and digitize the entire collection of Herculaneum papyri. Using a multi-spectral camera, they can photograph across the full range of the light spectrum. They are searching for a wavelength that will isolate the ink of the writing from the carbonized papyrus document.
Just a little bit at a time.
Here you have a collection that is burned. You have black ink on black papyri. Okay, center it, and we'll capture it.
Goodness.
Okay, that's
Wow.
good. What we do is we take a digital image using a specific wavelength of light from the visible clear into the infrared. The ink will somewhere along there show up in a specific wavelength of light, and we're searching where that is. The papyri, the black or the carbonized papyri, is going to drop out because it has a different reflective characteristic.
Good.
Once we find that contrast, this is where we concentrate our imaging. And some of these last scrolls, we're finding some of the greatest response.
This is the papyrus I was telling you about.
Up to now, researchers thought that the blackened papyrus segments on this board were blank.
Okay, now that's just what you're seeing here.
Now that's what we're seeing with the unaided eye. We see a very little hint of ink in here starting to appear, but still has provided a great deal of enjoyment to see the expression of satisfaction on the scholar's part.
Astounding.
My God.
Let's focus again. They can read something they have long given up on and see ink there where there was no visible ink before.
See if you can get some more words out of it.
Agathon estin kata tainda. You can see that from here.
That works?
Yeah.
The wonder of their photography is there just springs to life on this screen the difference between ink and papyrus, and I can't doubt anymore.
So this will change the way we read the papyri.
Really?
Totally, yes.
Oh, yeah.
These texts, like most of the papyri deciphered so far, are written in Greek.
It is focused.
Given that Herculaneum was a Roman town, that may seem bizarre. But the scrolls confirm that Greek remained the language of intellectuals well into the 1st century AD. Using NASA technology designed for space, the most complete ancient library in existence is being read for the first time in 2,000 years. Forensic science is gradually making sense of the scrolls. But until the digital archive is complete, the only way of reading Herculaneum's books involves days or years hunched over a microscope. Even so, the sensation of being the first to decipher the texts is thrilling.
These are unique. They tell us about the intellectual life of the 1st century.
126 years, archaeologists had searched this entire area trying to find the villa by referring to old maps. Instead, we decided to approach local people directly, asking whether they knew of any old wells or sharps.
Network of tunnels crisscrossing the entire region. During those frenzied days, the explorers stumbled upon a vast Roman villa, which was later recognized as the Holy Grails were abandoned, and the villa was lost. 250 years later, De Simone and Cioffi set out to find that villa.
For 200
Trail of Latin and Greek philosophy. Located some distance from the main buildings and at the end of a tunnel, there was no access to the building from outside. The tunnel...
To think that here, a long time ago, the first masters of our discipline worked.
The thirst for new relics from the lost world was insatiable. Before long, those first chaotic excavations had produced a network